A simple hug from a waitress to a lost little girl would change all their lives. And even a billionaire couldn't stay indifferent. Emily had been working at the small family restaurant for almost 3 years. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, where regular customers waved as they came in, and the smell of fresh bread and coffee always seemed to linger in the air. On this particular afternoon, the restaurant was busy, but not overwhelmingly so. Families filled most of the tables, children laughed and ran around, and the faint clatter of dishes mixed with the hum of conversation. Emily moved between tables, carrying trays of food with practiced ease, smiling at customers, and making sure everything was just right. She loved her job not because it was glamorous, but because she genuinely enjoyed connecting with people, even in the brief moments she had with them. As she cleared a table near the window, Emily noticed a small figure standing by the entrance. At first, she thought it was just another child waiting with a parent, but something made her pause. The little girl looked tiny and fragile, holding a small stuffed animal close to her chest. Her eyes were wide, almost searching, and there was a hint of worry in the way she looked around. Emily's heart immediately went out to her. She had always had a soft spot for children, and something about this little girl made her want to help. The child seemed lost, and Emily could sense that she was unsure where to go or who to ask for help. The girl took a hesitant step forward, then stopped, her gaze landing on Emily. She tugged gently at the edge of Emily's apron. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice almost trembling. "Have you seen my mommy?" Emily knelt down to meet the girl at eye level, lowering herself so she didn't seem intimidating. "No, sweetheart, I haven't seen her yet," she replied gently, trying to keep her voice calm and comforting. "But don't worry, we'll find her together, okay?" The girl nodded, but her grip on the stuffed animal tightened. There was a quiver in her lips, and Emily could see tears starting to form in her eyes. It was clear the little girl was scared, and Emily felt a strong surge of protectiveness. She wanted to do something, anything, to make the child feel safe. Emily's mind raced as she looked around the restaurant. Most of the tables were filled with people busy eating and talking. She couldn't just leave the girl alone. Out. And she needed to alert someone who could help, but she didn't want the girl to feel abandoned while they waited. She gently took the child's hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "Come with me," Emily said softly. She led the little girl to a small booth near the corner, away from the main flow of customers. "You can sit here with me for a while," she said, pulling out a chair so the girl could climb up comfortably. "I'm Emily. What's your name?" The girl sniffled and whispered, "Ava." Emily smiled. "Well, Ava, we're going to find your mommy. I promise." Ava's eyes brightened just a little at the reassurance, though the worry still lingered as Ava sat down. Emily asked the manager to make an announcement to see if anyone was looking for a lost child. Meanwhile, she kept her eyes on Ava, making small talk to keep her mind off the fear. "Do you like chocolate milk?" she asked, and Ava nodded shyly. Emily went to the counter and quickly poured a cup, returning with a straw and handing it to the girl. Ava took a sip and smiled faintly, the tension in her little body easing just a bit. Emily noticed how tightly Ava clutched her stuffed animal, a small white rabbit with one floppy ear, and she gently reached out to stroke the soft fur of it. "This is a very brave rabbit," she said. "Just like you." Ava looked at her, a tiny smile breaking through her fear. Emily felt her heart swell with a mix of relief and empathy. She knew that something as simple as a kind word or a gentle touch could make a big difference to a child who was scared and alone while she waited. Emily kept a careful watch on the door, hoping to see someone running in looking for Ava. She noticed a few patrons glancing curiously in their direction, whispering to each other, but Emily didn't mind. All that mattered was that Ava felt safe. She continued to talk softly, telling Ava little stories about her own dog at home and how mischievous he could be. Slowly, Ava began to relax, her small hands unclenching from around the stuffed animal. She even laughed quietly when Emily made a funny face, and for a moment, the fear that had clouded her eyes seemed to disappear. Emily realized that sometimes, when children were scared, the best thing you could do was simply be present. to offer comfort and stability while they tried to make sense of a situation that felt overwhelming to them. As the minutes passed, Emily felt a deep sense of responsibility. She had never met Ava before, yet she cared deeply about her in that moment. There was something profoundly human about that connection to strangers brought together by circumstance. One offering comfort, the other seeking it. Emily understood that this small act of kindness could have a lasting impact on Ava, and she quietly vowed to do everything she could to make sure the little girl felt safe and cared for until her mother arrived. She realized that sometimes life placed you in situations where you could make a real difference, and she wanted to rise to the occasion by now. Emily had learned Ava's favorite color, the name of her stuffed rabbit, and even a few words about her favorite games. The girl's initial shyness and fear had begun to fade, replaced by a tentative trust. Emily could see that Ava was starting to feel a little more secure, knowing that someone was there to help her. Every smile, every small laugh, reinforced Emily's belief that her simple presence and attention mattered. She also noticed the small signs of worry that still lingered, a reminder that Ava had been separated from someone she loved. Emily's heart ached at the thought, but she remained calm, knowing that panicking would only make Ava feel more anxious. She stayed steady, quiet anchor in the midst of a confusing and frightening moment for the little girl, as the restaurant continued its steady rhythm of food and conversation. Emily stayed with Ava, never leaving her side. She continued to talk, to reassure, and to comfort, creating a small bubble of safety amidst the bustle. Emily knew that the moment was delicate. One misstep could increase Ava's fear, but she also knew that every kind word, every gentle gesture could help. She felt a sense of fulfillment and purpose, knowing that even in a busy, ordinary day, she could offer something extraordinary: care, attention, and a feeling of safety to a frightened child. Emily's heart was full as she held Ava's hand, ready to do whatever it took to reunite her with her mother. Emily could feel the little girl trembling slightly as she sat in the corner booth, clutching her stuffed rabbit tightly. Ava's eyes were wide and filled with fear, and her small body seemed fragile against the bustling energy of the restaurant around them. Emily understood that a hug was sometimes more powerful than words, especially for a child who felt lost and alone. She leaned in slowly, speaking softly. "It's okay, Ava. You're safe now," she whispered. Ava hesitated for a moment, as if unsure whether to trust this stranger. But Emily's gentle tone and warm presence encouraged her. Slowly, Ava wrapped her small arms around Emily, burying her face into Emily's shoulder. The hug was tight but tentative, as if Ava was testing whether it was safe to let go of her fear as Emily held her. She could feel the little girl start to relax ever so slightly. The tension in Ava's small body began to ease, and a few quiet sobs escaped, more out of relief than sadness. Emily stroked her hair gently and whispered comforting words, letting Ava know she was not alone. Around them, the restaurant continued its usual rhythm. Plates clinked, conversations murmured, and the scent of fresh bread and simmering sauces filled the air. Yet in that small corner, it felt as though time slowed down for Emily and Ava. The hug, simple and human, became a silent promise of safety, of someone who cared. Emily knew that children often needed physical reassurance to feel secure. Words alone could not always reach them, especially when fear had taken hold. A hug, she understood, was universal. It spoke of protection, warmth, understanding without demanding anything in return. As she held Ava, Emily thought about how quickly a child could be overwhelmed by a sudden sense of being lost or separated. She remembered moments from her own childhood when a hug from someone she trusted had instantly made her feel better. She realized that this little girl needed exactly that, a moment of human connection that said, "You are not alone. I am here." Ava's grip around Emily's waist gradually tightened, and her sobs became quieter. The little girl's breathing, which had been shallow and rapid, started to slow as she found comfort in the embrace. Emily felt a surge of empathy, her heart aching for the fear and confusion that Ava was experiencing. Yet there was also a sense of hope, a recognition that something as simple as compassion could have a profound effect. Emily stayed there, not letting go, letting the child release her fear while silently promising to protect her until help arrived. Around them, the restaurant patrons began to notice. Some glanced curiously, whispering to each other, while others returned to their meals, sensing the intimacy of the moment but respecting it. Emily didn't pay attention to the onlookers. Her focus was entirely on Ava, reading the child's tiny movements and expressions. She noticed how Ava's small hands relaxed slightly, how her face softened, and how the initial tight grip on the stuffed rabbit loosened just a little. Each subtle change was a sign that the hug was working, that the child was beginning to feel safe in a place that had initially seemed overwhelming and frightening. Emily spoke softly, telling Ava stories about her own childhood, about moments when she had been scared and someone had comforted her. She described her dog, Max, and the funny things he did that always made her laugh. Ava listened quietly at first, her small head resting against Emily's shoulder. But gradually she started to respond, asking small questions and making shy comments. Emily answered each one patiently, using humor and kindness to ease the tension further. The little girl's laughter, soft and hesitant at first, began to fill the corner, mingling with the normal sounds of the restaurant. It was a small but powerful victory, a sign that trust was forming. Emily knew that physical comfort alone was not enough. Children also needed verbal reassurance to help them process their emotions. She explained gently that it was okay to feel scared, that being lost didn't mean anything was wrong with her. Sometimes we get separated, and that's okay. What matters is that we stay calm and find someone who can help us, Emily said. Ava's small nod showed that she understood at least enough to begin letting go of her panic. The combination of a soft hug, comforting words, and patient attention created a sense of stability in the little girl, while holding Ava. Emily also scanned the restaurant carefully. She looked for anyone who might be searching for the child, checking entrances and watching for signs of concern from patrons or staff. At the same time, she maintained her connection with Ava, making sure that the girl never felt abandoned. Emily knew that fear could return in an instant if the child felt ignored or alone. So she stayed attentive, speaking in soft, reassuring tones, sometimes making small jokes or playful faces to make Ava smile. She could see how much the little girl needed this sense of normalcy, a small refuge amidst the chaos of being temporarily separated from her parent. Minutes passed, and Ava's initial panic slowly transformed into cautious trust. She began to relax enough to look around and take in her surroundings, still holding on to Emily, but with less tension. Emily noticed that Ava's small legs, which had been curled up tightly, started to stretch out, and her tiny fingers unclenched from the stuffed rabbit. The child's eyes, which had been wide with fear, softened as she met Emily's gaze. It was a delicate transformation, the kind that could only happen through patience, empathy, and the simple act of holding someone when they needed it most. Emily continued to offer quiet encouragement, reminding Ava that she was safe and that they would find her mother soon. The warmth of the hug, combined with the gentle conversation and Emily's constant attention, allowed the little girl to feel a glimmer of security in an unfamiliar situation. Ava's sobs ceased entirely, replaced by soft sniffles and occasional small smiles. Emily's heart swelled with relief and compassion. She realized that these small, intentional actions, a hug, a kind word, a patient presence, could create a lasting impact on someone's life, especially a child's. As Emily held Ava, she reflected on the fleeting nature of moments like this. In a busy restaurant, amidst the clatter and noise, two strangers had connected in a profoundly human way. The fear of being lost had given way to a quiet trust, and Emily understood that such moments, though brief, could be deeply meaningful. She resolved to stay with Ava until help arrived, to ensure that the child remained calm, reassured, and safe. The hug had done more than comfort. It had begun to build a bridge between fear and trust, between isolation and connection. Even as the restaurant carried on around them, Emily remained focused entirely on Ava. She continued to whisper soothing words, occasionally brushing the child's hair from her face and maintaining the gentle embrace. Ava's small responses, soft giggles, quiet nods, and tentative questions signaled a growing sense of security. Emily felt a quiet pride, not in herself, but in the power of kindness, empathy, and human connection. She realized that sometimes the simplest actions, a hug, a calm presence, a listening ear, could be the most extraordinary. By the time the manager approached with news that someone was looking for a little girl, Ava's fear had largely subsided. She clung to Emily with a sense of gratitude and trust, showing that a moment of compassion could have a transformative effect. Emily guided Ava gently toward the manager while keeping her hand on the child's back, offering reassurance and continuity as they moved toward the next step of being reunited with her family. The hug, initially a spontaneous act of care, has become the cornerstone of Ava's comfort, showing the incredible impact that a single, selfless gesture could have in a moment of need. Emily and Ava were still sitting in the corner booth when the sound of hurried footsteps reached their ears. Emily looked up instinctively and saw a group of sharply dressed people moving quickly through the restaurant. They were followed by a tall man wearing a crisp suit and an expression of intense concern. His eyes scanned the room rapidly, and Emily immediately recognized the urgency of the situation. This was clearly someone looking for a child, and her heart quickened. She held Ava a little closer, making sure the little girl felt safe, while keeping her calm. "It's okay, Ava," she whispered. "Someone is coming for you." Ava looked up, her eyes wide with curiosity and still a hint of fear. Emily could sense the child's relief at the sight of an adult rushing purposefully toward them. Yet the girl clung tightly to Emily, hesitant to let go. The man approached the booth, and as he came closer, Emily realized he carried himself with a quiet authority. There was a presence about him that commanded attention without words. When he finally stopped a few feet away, Emily could see his expression soften as his gaze fell on Ava, who was now peeking out from behind Emily's arm. The little girl's eyes lit up at the sight of him, recognition and relief mingling in her tiny face. The man knelt down slightly to be at eye level with Ava. "Sweetheart, it's okay," he said in a gentle voice. "Daddy's here. You're safe now." Emily watched as Ava's grip on her loosened just a little, and the first real smile of the day began to appear. She noticed the subtle shift in the man's posture, from the tension of concern to a soft, almost emotional relief. It was clear to Emily that this man cared deeply for Ava. He reached out. Ava hesitated for just a moment before stepping into his arms. The hug they shared was tender and filled with unspoken words of reassurance. Emily felt a wave of warmth watching this reunion. But she also noticed the man's eyes flicking back to her with a look of gratitude that went beyond words. Emily stood quietly, giving them space, yet she felt the intensity of the moment. The man, who she now realized was Ava's father, seemed unusually grounded despite the stress of the situation. Instead of anger or frustration at the delay or the scare, his expression was calm, almost reverent. He noticed Emily holding Ava's stuffed rabbit and her gentle, protective demeanor. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice carrying a mixture of relief and admiration. Emily smiled and shook her head, brushing off the formal thanks. She simply said, "I'm just glad. She's okay." But she could tell from his gaze that he truly meant it. He wasn't used to people caring for his daughter with such genuine kindness. The father's presence brought a sense of closure to the tense atmosphere that had filled the restaurant. Emily could feel Ava relax fully now, snuggling against her father with a trust that only comes from familiarity and love. She noticed that while the girl had been scared moments before, she now radiated a sense of safety and comfort. The transition was remarkable. Just a few minutes of human connection and understanding had transformed a frightened child into a confident, reassured little girl. Emily felt a quiet pride, realizing that her small act of care had played a role in this transformation. As they exchanged a few words, Emily learned a little more about the father, Daniel Hawthorne. He was a well-known billionaire, someone used to handling large sums of money and complex business matters. Yet in this moment, all that seemed irrelevant compared to the safety of his daughter. Emily could sense that he was not just grateful for the reunion, but genuinely touched by the compassion shown to Ava. It was clear that Ava did not often open herself to strangers, yet she had found comfort in Emily's presence. Daniel admitted quietly that Ava rarely allowed herself to be comforted by anyone other than her immediate family. Emily felt honored that the little girl had trusted her enough to find solace in a stranger's hug. Emily continued to observe as Daniel gently spoke to Ava, reassuring her and listening to her tiny responses. The dynamic between father and daughter was tender and intimate, yet Emily could see the influence of her own earlier actions. Ava's confidence in being safe with an adult stranger had given her a smoother transition back to her father. Daniel noticed it too. He looked back at Emily and said, almost as if sharing a private moment of acknowledgement, "You've given her something I can't put into words. Thank you for being kind to her." Emily smiled again, touched by the sincerity. She realized that sometimes gestures of compassion could have far-reaching effects, bridging gaps between fear and trust, even with a child who had experienced separation anxiety around them. The restaurant patrons observed quietly, sensing the importance of the moment. Some whispered in awe, recognizing the quiet power of human connection that was unfolding before them. Emily felt a mix of humility and gratitude. She hadn't expected to meet a billionaire that day, or had she thought her simple hug could matter so much. That it was clear that kindness can transcend social status, wealth, or circumstance. In that booth, a powerful man and a frightened little girl had both been touched by her simple, human act of care. Daniel asked Emily a few more questions in a soft, considerate manner, making sure to show his appreciation without making her uncomfortable. He wanted her to know that her actions had real significance, that they had provided Ava with comfort and safety at a critical moment. Emily realized that what might have seemed like a small gesture, a hug, few gentle words, patient attention, was actually monumental to someone else. It reminded her of the importance of empathy and human connection in everyday life. Even a brief moment of care could create ripples that reached far beyond what anyone might initially realize. As Daniel finally stood to gather Ava in his arms and prepare to leave, he looked back at Emily one more time. His eyes conveyed gratitude, respect, and something deeper recognition of her humanity. Emily returned the look, smiling softly, feeling the quiet fulfillment of having made a difference. Ava waved goodbye shyly, still clutching her stuffed rabbit, and Emily waved back. The warmth of the encounter lingered in the restaurant, a silent story of kindness, trust, and the power of a simple hug. Emily watched as father and daughter walked toward the exit, security personnel flanking them, and a sense of closure settled in. She realized that this day would stay with her forever, not because of the attention or recognition, but because of the connection she had made with a small child in need and the gratitude she had witnessed from a parent. The moment reinforced her belief that even in ordinary jobs and ordinary days, one could make an extraordinary difference in someone's life. After they left, Emily returned to her work, but her heart felt lighter, fuller, and deeply moved. The encounter reminded her of the profound effect of empathy and human kindness. In her corner of the restaurant, she had created a space of safety and trust, and in doing so, she had touched the life of a little girl and her father in ways that money, status, or influence could never achieve. Emily understood that day that sometimes the simplest acts, a hug, a smile, a few kind words, could have the most lasting impact, creating memories and connections that endure far beyond the moment itself. Emily felt a sense of relief as she watched Daniel and Ava begin to walk toward the exit, the little girl now fully in her father's protective embrace. Yet even as they left, Emily remained quietly reflective, thinking about the delicate balance between fear, trust, and kindness that had unfolded in the restaurant. She couldn't help but wonder about the life of this little girl and her father, a man whose presence had carried both authority and tenderness. Emily realized that what she had witnessed was far more than a simple reunion. It was a window into the hidden struggles and quiet, the vulnerabilities that even people with immense wealth and influence often carry. Later, while returning to her usual tasks, Emily's manager approached her with a gentle smile. "You did an amazing job back there," he said softly. "That little girl clearly trusted you immediately. You made her feel safe." Emily shrugged lightly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. She had acted instinctively, guided by empathy and a desire to help. Yet, hearing it acknowledged reminded her that even simple acts of kindness could have profound significance. Emily thought about Ava, how a few minutes of genuine care had transformed fear into trust, hesitation into courage. She realized that in moments like these, patience, compassion, presence mattered more than words or grand gestures. Later that evening, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the interaction. She reflected on the details she had noticed about Ava, the small ways she clung to her stuffed rabbit, the tentative movements, the cautious glances around the room. It struck Emily how deeply children perceive safety and care. Ava had responded not to wealth or status, but to Emily's warmth, calm demeanor, and consistent attention. Emily thought about Daniel, to the billionaire father, who had reacted not with anger at the situation, but with profound appreciation and emotion. She realized that money and influence, powerful as they might be, could not replace the human connection that Emily had provided, even for a child raised in privilege. A few days later, Emily received a surprising message through the restaurant. Daniel Hawthorne himself had asked to speak with her. She was initially hesitant, unsure of why a billionaire father would want to contact her. But curiosity and a quiet sense of anticipation got the better of her. When she met him, Daniel was different from the imposing figure she had seen that day in the restaurant. Without the tension of concern, he exuded a gentle humility and genuine warmth. He thanked Emily again, explaining more about his family and his life. He shared that Ava rarely allowed herself to trust strangers, yet something about Emily's presence had made a profound impact on his daughter. Emily listened carefully. Humbled by the unexpected depth of the conversation, Daniel shared with Emily some of the challenges of being a single father. Managing a multi-billion-dollar empire left him constantly on the move, and he admitted that sometimes it was difficult to balance work with parenting. Ava, he explained, had experienced moments of anxiety due to past events, and her separation from him that afternoon had triggered fear. Emily realized that the simple act of hugging Ava had offered something beyond comfort. It had given the little girl reassurance that someone could be trusted, even in a confusing, scary moment. Daniel expressed how rare it was for Ava to open up to anyone, and how her initial trust in Emily had moved him deeply. Emily felt a mixture of pride and humility. She had acted naturally, yet the impact was extraordinary. During their conversation, Daniel mentioned his philanthropic efforts, particularly initiatives focused on children. He shared that he wanted to create environments where children could feel safe, nurtured, and supported, regardless of their circumstances. Emily listened intently, realizing that the encounter in the restaurant had illuminated for him the importance of compassion in everyday interactions. Daniel explained that witnessing Emily's care had reinforced his belief that acts of kindness could create ripples far beyond a single moment. He wanted Ava to have more experiences where she could feel safe and understood, and he hoped to foster similar opportunities for other children. As the conversation continued, Daniel extended an invitation to Emily. He wanted her to participate in one of his upcoming charity events aimed at supporting children who faced difficult circumstances. Emily was taken aback. She had never considered herself someone of influence, someone whose actions could inspire or support others on a larger scale. Yet, Daniel's words were sincere. He believed that Emily's natural empathy, patience, and kindness could make a difference far beyond that single afternoon. Emily felt honored and humbled. She realized that her instinctive act of care had created an unexpected bridge, connecting her to a larger purpose and showing her that even ordinary people could have extraordinary impact. Emily also reflected on Ava's behavior throughout the encounter. She realized how powerful trust and emotional connection were for children, and how deeply they could internalize acts of kindness. Ava had allowed herself to be vulnerable, had responded to Emily's warmth, and had found comfort in a stranger's embrace. Emily understood that moments like this could shape a child's sense of security, self-worth, and belief in human goodness. She felt a renewed sense of purpose in her work, recognizing that every small interaction, every smile, every kind word, every gentle touch held the potential to make a lasting difference. Later, Emily shared her experience with close friends and family. She recounted the reunion, the hug, and the extraordinary reaction of Ava's father. Everyone listened with awe, impressed not only by the story itself, but by Emily's humility and dedication. Emily realized that the impact of a compassionate act often extends far beyond the immediate moment. The gratitude expressed by Daniel, the sense of safety Ava had gained, and the connections formed through simple kindness all reinforced a vital lesson: empathy. Care and patience are invaluable tools, capable of changing lives in meaningful ways. As time passed, Emily remained in contact with Daniel and Ava in small, thoughtful ways. She received updates about Ava's well-being and progress. Learning that the little girl had become more confident and trusting, not just with her father, but with others as well. Emily realized that the hug she had given had created a foundation for Ava to feel secure and loved, and she marveled at the lasting ripple effect of a small, heartfelt gesture. She also reflected on the humility of the billionaire father, who had expressed gratitude so sincerely and without pretension. Recognizing the irreplaceable value of human connection, Emily began to see her own life differently after that day. She understood that acts of kindness need not be grand or elaborate to be impactful. A hug, a gentle word, a patient presence, these could matter more than any material wealth or social status. She also recognized that moments of compassion could bring people together in unexpected ways, forging bonds that transcend ordinary circumstances. Her experience with Ava and Daniel reinforced the idea that the world is shaped as much by empathy, care as it is by money or power. Looking back, Emily understood that the encounter in the restaurant had been transformative, not just for Ava or Daniel, but for herself as well. It had reinforced her belief in the power of kindness, had shown her the profound effect of simple human connection, and had opened doors to unexpected opportunities to make a positive impact. Emily felt grateful for the experience, knowing that the small act of embracing a frightened little girl had created lasting ripples of hope, trust, and compassion. She realized that sometimes the most ordinary moments hold the potential to become extraordinary, leaving impressions that endure far beyond the initial encounter. Emily returned to her usual tasks in the restaurant after that unforgettable day, but she couldn't stop thinking about Ava and her father, Daniel. Even as plates clattered and orders were called out, her mind kept replaying the little girl's hesitant smile, the way she had clung to her stuffed rabbit, and the quiet trust that had blossomed in the span of a few minutes. Emily felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before in her work. She had always loved helping people, but this moment had reminded her of the profound impact a single act of kindness could have, especially on someone so young and vulnerable. A few days later, to her surprise, Daniel reached out to her personally. He wanted to thank her again and invite her to participate in a special charity event he was organizing for children. Emily was stunned. She had never imagined that a simple act of comforting a lost child could lead to this. When they met, Daniel's demeanor was warm, sincere, and surprisingly humble. He explained that he wanted Ava and other children like her to experience kindness, security, and joy in their lives. And he believed that Emily had a gift for creating those feelings naturally. Emily listened, feeling both honored and nervous. She hadn't thought of herself as someone influential, but Daniel's words made her see that even ordinary people could make extraordinary contributions. Emily also began to learn more about Daniel and his family life. He shared the challenges he faced as a single father, balancing his vast business empire with raising a young child. Ava's fears and anxieties, he explained, were often difficult to manage because she was sensitive and sometimes worried about being separated from him. Emily realized that the little girl's attachment and hesitation weren't unusual. They were signs of love, but also of vulnerability. Emily's simple presence and gentle care had allowed Ava to feel safe, secure, and understood in a situation that could have been frightening. She recognized the power of patience, empathy, and calmness in helping a child navigate emotional challenges. Over time, Emily and Daniel built a respectful and friendly connection. She learned that her actions had not only comforted Ava, but had also inspired Daniel in his parenting and philanthropic efforts. He admired the way she instinctively knew how to respond to the child, how she had created a space of safety and trust with nothing more than kindness and attention. Emily felt a quiet sense of pride and satisfaction knowing that her natural empathy had made such a tangible difference. She also began to understand that sometimes the simplest gestures, like a hug, a few comforting words, or gentle guidance could have the most lasting impact. Emily's life began to shift subtly. Her confidence grew as she realized that small acts of compassion could ripple outward, touching lives in unexpected ways. She participated in Daniel's charity event. Helping children who faced challenges similar to Ava's, Emily spoke with them, listened to their fears, and offered comfort in the same way she had for Ava. The experience was deeply rewarding. She saw firsthand how a moment of attention and care could brighten a child's day, make them feel valued, and help them trust again. Emily also discovered that helping others enriched her own life, giving her a sense of purpose and fulfillment she had not anticipated. Ava's progress was especially gratifying. Through Emily's continued presence, both in person and through occasional updates from Daniel, the little girl became more confident and resilient. She smiled more easily, interacted with others more openly, and showed signs of joy that her father had rarely seen before. Emily recognized that trust once built could have long-lasting effects. Ava's initial fear had been replaced by security, her hesitancy by courage, and her sadness by a sense of being loved and understood. Emily felt honored to have played a role in helping shape these positive changes, and she knew that her actions had lasting significance beyond the fleeting moment of a hug in a busy restaurant. Emily's story began to spread quietly among the people who had witnessed the encounter that day. Customers, co-workers, and friends all spoke about the kindness she had shown. They admired the patience, empathy, and bravery it took to comfort a frightened child in public. Emily realized that her simple actions had inspired others to think about how they could offer kindness in their own lives. She reflected on the importance of human connection, understanding that empathy and care were universal tools that could bridge gaps of age, status, or circumstance. Her experience had become a gentle reminder to herself and others that small acts of compassion could create meaningful change. Daniel, too, continued to express his gratitude. He often mentioned how rare it was for Ava to trust anyone outside their family and how Emily's care had provided a model for the kind of warmth and attention he wanted to foster in her life. Emily felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that she had made a real difference for both Ava and Daniel. She understood that these moments were not about recognition or reward. They were about genuine human connection and the lasting impact it could have on lives. Emily realized that sometimes being present and attentive, showing empathy, and offering comfort could be more powerful than anything money or status could achieve. Through her ongoing interactions with Daniel and Ava, Emily also discovered a sense of purpose beyond her daily work in the restaurant. She began to volunteer more actively, using her natural ability to connect with children and offer comfort to those in need. She understood that the skills she had used instinctively that afternoon, patience, empathy, attentiveness, and kindness, were valuable tools that could help others in profound ways. Emily also reflected on how ordinary people often underestimate the power of small gestures, and she became committed to showing others that these acts mattered. Emily's connection with Ava and Daniel became a story of lasting human impact. The little girl had learned to trust, to feel safe, and to embrace joy in ways that had been challenging before. Daniel had learned to recognize the power of everyday compassion and how profoundly it could influence a child's emotional well-being. Emily had discovered that a simple act of kindness could create ripples far beyond the initial moment, shaping relationships, inspiring generosity, and fostering growth. The encounter in the restaurant had started as a small act to hug, but it had transformed into a story of connection, gratitude, and enduring impact. As Emily reflected on everything that had happened, she realized that life often presents moments where ordinary people have the chance to make extraordinary differences. She understood that compassion, patience, and attentiveness could be as powerful as any grand gesture or significant financial gift. The experience reinforced her belief in the value of empathy, the strength of human connection, and the beauty of small acts of care that could profoundly affect others. Emily knew that even in everyday life, there were countless opportunities to provide comfort, reassurance, and kindness to those who needed it most. Finally, Emily recognized that her life had been enriched by the encounter in ways she could never have anticipated. The hug she had given Ava had sparked a chain of events that brought joy, safety, and trust to a little girl, gratitude and insight to a father, and purpose and fulfillment to herself. Emily realized that every moment held the potential to create meaningful change, and that even the simplest acts, when given with genuine care, could leave a lasting impression on the lives of others. The story of that afternoon remained in her heart, a constant reminder of the extraordinary power of ordinary human kindness.